When it comes to anything that's projected on a screen, there are often three different terms tossed around: hertz, FPS, or frames per second, and refresh rate. Now, what's the difference? Well, in reality, it's nothing. It's more of what you're referring to. So when you're talking about a screen, be it a projector, a monitor, or a television, people will talk about hertz. That's being the cycles per second, or how often the screen itself will fetch and refresh new images. That's your refresh rate. Hertz is also used in measuring the speeds of a CPU, be it in megahertz or gigahertz, and the name Hertz itself is derived from Heinrich Rudolf Hertz, who was the very first person to give proof of electromagnetic waves. Now, frames per second, or frame rate, or FPS, this is more to do with rendering, precisely the speed at which images are presented on a given screen, hence the frames per second. Or it could be called images per second. Here's something interesting. Videos, TV, movies, they're almost always filmed at 30 to 60 frames per second. Console games are almost always geared towards 60 frames per second. And PC games and monitors are often touted that they can render at 120 plus frames per second. And that's entirely dependent on your hardware, though. So why the vast difference? Well, think about it this way. This video, for example, is shot at 30 frames per second. Even at 180p, the video quality itself is picture perfect, but you really wouldn't notice the difference between me standing directly in front of you versus me here on your screen. And supposing that whatever you're watching this on renders at 30 plus hertz, which it more than likely does, seeing as that most modern TVs, monitors, phone screens all display at 60 plus hertz. Now there's a lot of debate as to what the rate a human eye can actually process images, but what can be said is that you can definitely tell the difference between 30 frames per second and 120 frames per second. But none of that matters if your monitor only has a refresh rate of 60 hertz, and your game that you're running at is 120 frames per second. In all actuality, you're losing half of the images that could be displayed at any given moment. So am I saying that you should get a better monitor or a better graphics card? No, not at all. You can have a wonderful gaming experience at 60 frames per second, and you can ask anyone that enjoyed playing the original Mario series if they had a good experience. I mean, the NES registered games at 60 frames per second. Halo on the original Xbox, that was 60 frames per second. It all comes down to what hardware you have and how the game is geared, and that comes down to what you have your settings set to. Just because you don't have the newest specs doesn't mean you can't do anything enjoyable. Older games are just as fun, with rich storylines and ingenuitive gameplay that just can't be beat. And even if gaming isn't your style, the old PCs can still watch movies or scroll through the web without the need of something that can push a 240 hertz refresh rate. Let me know your opinions or what you think. And if you liked this video, please like and subscribe for more content in the future. But for now, I'm Waylon, and this is At the PCs.